This episode contains mature themes and includes narration produced using AI voice technology. Listener discretion is advised. A young traveler checked into one of Los Angeles' most infamous hotels and vanished. For weeks, no one knew where she had gone. Then came the discovery, her body hidden in a rooftop water tank after guests complained of foul-tasting tap water. The only clue to her final hours was a grainy surveillance video. Elisa Lam in an elevator, moving with strange, frantic gestures, as if fighting something no one else could see. Her death remains one of the most disturbing mysteries of the century. Welcome to Three Theories, the podcast where we uncover the great mysteries of the world. I'm Elena Hart, your guide on this journey through the unknown. Each episode will examine unsolved cases, paranormal phenomena, and historical and natural mysteries, and explore three compelling theories to help you decide. What do you believe? On January 26th, 2013, Elisa Lam arrived in Los Angeles. She was 21 years old, a student from Vancouver, Canada, traveling alone through California on a solo adventure. Elisa was bright, introspective, and curious about the world. She wrote openly on social media about her struggles with bipolar disorder and depression, but also about her excitement to see new places. For her stay in Los Angeles, she checked into the Cecil Hotel, a budget lodging in downtown. The Cecil was no ordinary hotel. For decades, it had carried a reputation steeped in violence and death. It was a place where serial killers had once lived, where suicides had taken place in upper-story rooms, where tragedy seemed to return again and again. To some, the Cecil was cursed. To others, it was simply cheap and dangerous. For Elisa Lam, it was the place where her story would end. At first, nothing appeared unusual. Elisa called her family back in Canada regularly, checking in and updating them on her trip. But on January 31st, those calls stopped. Elisa was gone. Her parents grew alarmed and contacted Los Angeles police. A missing persons investigation began. Flyers with her picture were distributed across the city. The Cecil Hotel was searched, but no trace of her was found. Weeks went by. Guests came and went. The hotel continued its daily operations. Elisa Lam was nowhere. Then on February 13th, the police made a decision that changed everything. They released a surveillance video from the hotel's elevator, recorded on the night Elisa disappeared. The footage was less than 4 minutes long, but it would become one of the most infamous videos in internet history. The black and white grainy video shows Elisa stepping into the elevator, wearing a red hoodie and shorts. At first, she presses several buttons in quick succession. The doors don't close. She leans into the hallway, peering out cautiously, then darts back inside and presses herself against the wall as if hiding. Her movements are jittery, restless, as though she's aware of something we cannot see. Seconds later, Elisa steps out into the hall. Her arms move in strange, unnatural patterns, jerky, twisting motions that look almost like signals or convulsions. At one point, she raises her hands above her head and bends her fingers in claw-like shapes, as though interacting with something invisible. She re-enters the elevator, then leaves again, moving in and out, her body language oscillating between fear and something harder to name. The doors remain open the entire time, never closing, as if the elevator itself is broken, or refusing to cooperate. After nearly 4 minutes, Elisa walks out of frame for the last time. The doors finally shut. For viewers, the effect was disturbing. Millions who saw the footage online described it as deeply unsettling. Some believed Elisa was hiding from someone chasing her. Others said her movements resembled those of someone under the influence of drugs, or someone in the grip of a psychotic episode. Still others insisted she was interacting with something not visible on camera. Whatever was happening in that hallway, Elisa Lam was never seen alive again. On February 19th, nearly 3 weeks after her disappearance, the mystery came to a grim end. Guests at the Cecil began to complain about low water pressure, foul smells, and a strange taste in the tap water. Maintenance workers were sent to the roof to inspect the hotel's water tanks. When one of them lifted the heavy hatch of a cylindrical tank, he was confronted with a horrific sight: the body of Elisa Lam, floating face up in the dark water. The discovery sent shockwaves through the hotel. For weeks, guests had been drinking, bathing, and brushing their teeth with contaminated water. Police were called, and the tank was drained to recover the body. Elisa was naked, her clothes floating nearby. There were no signs of external injury, no evidence of assault. But questions piled up immediately. The rooftop tanks were not easily accessible. To reach them, Elisa would have had to climb up a secured staircase or ladder, pass through a locked door with an alarm, scale the tank, and somehow lift a heavy metal lid before slipping inside. For a young woman alone, this was no simple task. How did she get there? The autopsy brought little clarity. The official cause of death was listed as accidental drowning, with bipolar disorder as a significant factor. Toxicology screens revealed no drugs or alcohol beyond her prescribed medications. Yet this explanation left many unsatisfied. If Elisa had drowned accidentally, how had she reached the tanks in the first place? And what explained her bizarre behavior in the elevator? The strangeness of the case deepened as details emerged. Some guests claimed the water in the hotel had been discolored for days before her discovery. Others described it as dark and viscous. The idea that dozens of people unknowingly consumed water, tainted by a decomposing body, became part of the horror. Internet sleuths dissected the elevator video frame by frame, analyzing her hand gestures, speculating about shadows in the hallway, even suggesting the footage had been tampered with. They pointed out strange time skips, arguing that at least a minute of the recording had been cut. Why? Meanwhile, attention returned to the Cecil Hotel itself. Its history of violence, its association with infamous criminals, and its long record of death made the setting feel more like a character in Elisa's story than a backdrop. Some began to claim the hotel's dark legacy had claimed yet another victim, that Elisa Lam had not simply died, but had been drawn into something sinister within its walls. Theories spiraled outward. Some said Elisa had been murdered and her body hidden in the tank. Others argued she had been hallucinating, driven by a manic episode into irrational behavior. Still others claimed paranormal forces were involved. The elevator footage became central to every interpretation. Elisa's strange movements, the unresponsive doors, the sudden absence when she walked away. It was a sequence of images too eerie to dismiss, too ambiguous to explain. Years later, the death of Elisa Lam remains unresolved in the minds of many. The coroner's report says accident. But the unanswered questions, the locked rooftop, the missing minutes of tape, the bizarre behavior, the very fact of her presence in that water tank, refuse to settle into a neat conclusion. For Elisa's family, the loss is devastating and personal. For the public, her death has become one of the most disturbing modern mysteries, captured forever in flickering black and white footage that millions still find too unsettling to watch alone. And so the story of Elisa Lam endures, bound to the cursed reputation of the Cecil Hotel, where the ordinary intersects with the unexplainable. Why did she move the way she did in the elevator? How did she reach the rooftop tanks without anyone noticing? And what truly happened in those final, missing minutes of her life? The answers remain locked inside the Cecil Hotel, as chilling now as the night she vanished. The official conclusion in the Elisa Lam case was deceptively simple. An accidental drowning, brought on by a combination of disorientation, mental health struggles, and unsafe conditions at the Cecil Hotel. On paper, it is the explanation that requires the fewest leaps. Yet the details make it far from straightforward. Elisa had a documented history of bipolar disorder, something she spoke about candidly on her blog. Friends and family described her as bright and creative, but prone to mood swings and episodes of depression. Medical records revealed she was prescribed several medications, including mood stabilizers and antidepressants. When toxicology reports came back, they showed that while Elisa had taken some of her prescriptions, others were either absent or present at subtherapeutic levels. To investigators, this suggested she may not have been consistently medicated at the time of her death. In that state, one possibility is that Elisa suffered a manic or psychotic episode while at the Cecil. Her erratic movements in the elevator, pressing multiple buttons, hiding in the corner, making frantic gestures, fit the profile of someone in the grip of paranoia or hallucinations. Perhaps she believed she was being followed. Perhaps she saw or heard something that wasn't there. From this perspective, her behavior is not evidence of an external threat, but of an internal struggle. That night, the theory goes, Elisa left the safety of her room and made her way up to the roof. There were obstacles in the way, locked doors, security alarms, access ladders. But the Cecil was notorious for poor maintenance and lax security. Employees admitted that the rooftop doors were often left unsecured, and the alarm system frequently malfunctioned. Some staff even suggested the alarms weren't always armed at all. If Elisa wandered upstairs during a moment of confusion or fear, it's not impossible she found a path unblocked. The water tanks themselves presented another challenge. Each stood several feet high, with ladders leading to the top and heavy metal lids covering the openings. Yet workers testified that the lids were often left ajar, resting loosely in place. If Elisa climbed the ladder and looked inside, she may have seen only darkness reflected back at her. Whether she fell in by accident or intentionally slipped inside, the result would have been the same. Once in the tank, escape would have been nearly impossible. The sides were slick with condensation. The water was cold, numbing her body quickly. With no footholds or handles, there was no way to climb back out. The tank would have become a silent trap, her cries muffled by the thick metal walls, her struggle unnoticed by the city sprawling below. In many ways, the accidental theory is the most plausible. It explains her strange behavior as untreated symptoms of her illness. It explains her presence in the tank through the hotel's poor security and maintenance. And it explains her death without invoking hidden attackers or supernatural forces. But this theory leaves behind unsettling questions. Why was the elevator door frozen open for so long? Why was a minute of the surveillance video apparently missing? And if Elisa climbed into the tank on her own, how did the heavy lid end up closed again when her body was discovered? The accidental death explanation may close the case for investigators, but it does not silence the unease. Instead, it frames Elisa's final hours as a tragic convergence of vulnerability, neglect, and chance. An ordinary young woman caught in a spiral of confusion, trapped in the wrong place at the wrong time. For many, the official conclusion of accidental drowning never sat right. The Cecil Hotel was infamous for crime, drugs, and predatory guests. To dismiss the possibility of foul play felt to some like an oversight. Elisa Lam was traveling alone, a young woman in a dangerous part of Los Angeles. Could she have become the victim of an attack or cover-up? Supporters of this theory point first to the elevator footage. Elisa's behavior has been widely debated. Was she hiding or hallucinating? Some viewers insist it looks more like she was interacting with someone just out of frame. Her peering into the hallway, pressing against the corner of the elevator, stepping in and out with hesitation. All of it seems consistent with someone avoiding another person. The fact that the elevator doors refused to close for the entire 4 minutes only adds to the suspicion. If Elisa was being pursued, the malfunctioning elevator may have left her trapped, vulnerable, and desperate. The missing section of video adds fuel to this fire. Analysts who studied the footage noted jump cuts and time inconsistencies, suggesting up to a minute of tape was removed before being released to the public. The Los Angeles Police Department never explained why. Was it simply a glitch in the recording system? Or was something, perhaps someone, deliberately edited out? If another person had been following Elisa, the video may have captured them. The circumstances of her discovery also raise questions. The rooftop was supposed to be secured, with locked doors and alarm systems. To reach the water tanks, Elisa would have had to bypass these measures, climb to the roof, and lift a heavy metal lid. For a panicked young woman acting alone, it seems unlikely. But for someone with access, hotel staff, for instance, it would have been simple. Some guests even claimed the lid was closed when Elisa's body was found, though maintenance workers gave conflicting accounts. If the lid was sealed, how could she have closed it from the inside? Then there are the whispers about the Cecil's unsavory history. The hotel had long been a haven for criminals and vagrants. In the 1980s, serial killer Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, lived on the upper floors while carrying out his murders. In the 1990s, Austrian killer Jack Unterweger stayed there while stalking sex workers in Los Angeles. The Cecil was a magnet for danger. It isn't far-fetched to think Elisa Lam could have encountered the wrong person in its halls. Even the discovery of her body suggests the possibility of concealment. If Elisa had been killed, placing her in the water tank would have hidden the evidence for weeks. Guests unwittingly consumed contaminated water before her remains were found, ensuring the timeline of her death was muddied beyond clarity. Yet despite all of this, the evidence for murder remains circumstantial. The autopsy revealed no signs of assault, no defensive wounds, no drugs beyond her prescriptions. If someone harmed her, they left behind no clear trace. Still, the unanswered questions linger. The missing footage, the broken elevator, the sealed rooftop. Each detail leaves space for doubt, for suspicion that someone else played a role in Elisa Lam's death. For those who cannot accept accident, foul play is the most plausible explanation. But without proof, it lives only in speculation. Another layer of shadow in the already dark story of the Cecil Hotel. If the rational explanations leave too many holes, there's one theory that chills even the most skeptical: that Elisa Lam's death was not entirely human in origin, that she became the latest victim of something lurking within the Cecil Hotel, something that has fed on despair for nearly a century. From the moment it opened in the 1920s, the Cecil carried a reputation that grew darker with each passing decade. Guests leapt from upper-story windows, their bodies breaking on the sidewalk below. Others overdosed or died alone in locked rooms. The hotel became home to killers like Richard Ramirez, who walked its halls after murdering at random, and Jack Unterweger, who stalked sex workers during his stay. With so much blood, so much fear, some say the building itself absorbed it, becoming less a hotel and more a mausoleum with walls that breathe. Placed against this backdrop, Elisa Lam's final hours take on an unsettling tone. In the elevator footage, her movements are jerky and unnatural, her hands curling into claw-like shapes, as if grappling with something we cannot see. Her body twists and recoils, as though resisting an invisible presence. To many, it does not look like fear of another person. It looks like a struggle with something inhuman. And then there are the elevator doors. For more than 3 minutes, they refuse to close, hanging open like a gaping mouth. Only when Elisa finally walks away do they slide shut, calm and smooth as if satisfied. To believers, it's not a malfunction. It's an omen, the building itself holding its prey in place. Stranger still are the cultural parallels. Some point to the so-called elevator game, a Korean urban legend said to summon spirits or transport the player to another dimension if the right sequence of buttons is pressed. Elisa presses multiple buttons in rapid succession, her behavior eerily similar to the ritual. In the legend, players often report feeling watched, hunted, or pulled into an unseen realm. Watching the footage, it's hard not to feel the same cold dread. When Elisa vanished from view, she was not seen again until she surfaced in the water tank, naked, submerged, her clothes floating beside her, as if she had been consumed by the hotel and left behind like an offering. The tanks themselves, dark and silent, carried a symbolic weight. Water as purification, as drowning, as passage to another world. It was as though she had been drawn upward to the rooftop, to a place where the hotel could finally claim her. Skeptics dismiss this as superstition layered over tragedy. But others believe the Cecil's history cannot be separated from Elisa's fate. That the building itself is cursed, haunted by decades of misery, and that Elisa Lam, alone, vulnerable, and struggling, was pulled into its grip. Theories of spirits, curses, or possession are impossible to prove. But what unsettles many is how neatly they seem to fit the details left unexplained. The distorted gestures, the elevator that would not close, the rooftop that should have been locked, the heavy lid that seemed impossible to shut from within. Elisa Lam's death may have been an accident. It may have been murder. But if the Cecil Hotel is more than brick and concrete, if it is something alive, then her death may be just one more in a chain that has no end. Thank you for joining us on this episode of 3 Theories. The death of Elisa Lam remains one of the most disturbing and perplexing mysteries of the 21st century. Was her drowning a tragic accident, the result of untreated illness and the dangers of a neglected building? Was she the victim of foul play? Her body hidden in the water tank to erase evidence no one would ever find? Or was she pulled into something far stranger, another victim of the Cecil Hotel's long, haunted legacy? What do you believe? We want to hear your thoughts and theories. Share them with us on social media and join the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more curious minds like yours and continue to explore the world's greatest mysteries. Join us next time as we uncover another intriguing case and present 3 more theories for you to consider. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.